What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Welcome back into what is take 2 of this video. Safe to say that a couple weeks in, this new microphone and I have a love-hate relationship. If it's not I have to basically go in and make sure that it's connected every single time, or else it doesn't record the audio on my video. So if you guys watched the first video, you obviously know that the audio didn't record. But today's video is essentially about run gaps and defensive run assignments in Madden. I actually had a commenter or a subscriber leave a comment on a video that said that they were requesting a run fits breakdown in Madden 20. So I'm going to do my best to try and give an idea of that, at least my take on that here in Madden 20. Realistically, it's pretty easy. You can utilize any type of defense. Oh, must need to flip sides again. I don't know if I just did that right or not. I think I have to run a random play. But we're going to break down run gaps, basically, how to stuff run gaps, how to read assignments, how to read offensive gaps, and everything like that, and essentially help you stop the run a little bit better here in Madden 20. Now, you can do this out of any base defense. As you guys might have seen in one of my previous videos, I chose to illustrate that I prefer the 3-4 over the 4-3 as a base defense, but they can both be adjusted effectively to stop the run, to fill gaps appropriately. I just prefer to do it out of the 3-4. I like it a little bit better. And then there are some differences between doing it out of a base formation, which is going to be against a more of a heavier offense, and doing it out of a pass stopping type of formation, like a nickel or a quarter or a dime or something like that. If you do struggle to stop the run out of passing formations, the offense comes out in passing formations and runs against you, I would suggest maybe trying out the big nickel, because it puts a third safety on the field in place of the third corner, so it gives you a little bit of a bigger bodied formation to stop the run. But let's actually get into the run fits, or the run gaps, or run assignments, however you want to call it. The person is not wrong. We used to call them run fits whenever I played football, but I prefer in Madden to refer to them as assignments. Just because I think it's a little bit less confusing to do that. So let's go ahead and come out in what I came out in the last time before the video just chose not to work, and that is essentially this single back formation against a base 3-4 defense. Because, I could come out in blitzes and whatnot and show you guys how to stop runs with blitzes and whatnot, but that's not going to be effective unless you first understand the run defensive assignments. Now, the first things first is each defensive lineman obviously has their assignment of which gap they're going to be going to. We're not going to refer to them as any particular gap, like a 0-3-1 technique, any of those things that we used to use whenever we played football. We're just going to refer to them as the gap between certain players, because I think that that's easier to understand. And so a good example would be Vita Vea here is trying to fill the gap between the center and the right guard. He's going to try and place himself over in this direction whenever the play starts. Likewise with Lawrence here, he's going to try and place himself into this gap. And so you have to understand the action of how that works, and I want you guys to also start to think of the offensive side of the ball, where the offense can actually run the football. And then you're going to start to develop a picture of how these things will play out in your head before the play ever actually even happens, before the ball is ever snapped, and you'll be able to adjust accordingly to where the ball can actually go. So first things first, let's actually discuss where the offense can run the ball out of a formation like this. Most formations are going to actually have a strong side, and that is the case in this formation, where they have a tight end on the right side of the football over here. That is their strong side of the formation. They have better blocking over there, they have better matchups over there, so more than likely the run play can go in that direction. The other thing you have to consider is that you're not going to, as an offense, want to run the ball against a player who has contain, and you're not going to want to run the ball against poor blocking. And so I obviously, out of this formation on offense, wouldn't want to run to the left side of the ball, because this guy has easy contain. There's no one there to block him, and even if the tackle tried to block him, he would have a hard time reaching him. Likewise, this receiver all the way out here would not be able to come in here and actually effectively block this linebacker, so it would be ineffective for the offense to run the ball that way. So you have to consider, where could this offense actually run the ball? Well, they could run it up the middle or to the right. And that is essentially where the gaps are. Then you want to start to identify where the gaps are now that you've identified which direction the ball can go in. Well, there's a gap right here between my D tackle and the defensive end. In addition to that, there's a gap right here where the guard is between my D tackle and the defensive end. There's potentially a gap right here between my defensive end and my outside linebacker, and the reason being for that is that this player does not have contain. He is in a one-on-one block with the tight end, and in addition to that, this defensive lineman is pinching in at the moment, so he's going to end up right here. So that creates a gap in this space right here between the action of the defensive end and the outside linebacker. On top of that, this linebacker's first reaction, especially if they're not a good outside linebacker, is going to be to drop back into their zone. Ryan Kerrigan's a good linebacker, so he may just sit here and engage with the tight end and shed his block or try to contest the run as his first instinct. But for lesser players, they're just going to drop back immediately into their assignment sometimes, and that's going to create a big gap right here for the player to actually be able to run the football. Now, the other thing is that Ryan Kerrigan right now doesn't have as much of a contain as this outside linebacker does. So you want to consider where the contain actually is. And so this guy, they're not getting outside of Davis Sr. You know, there's nobody there that can block him in or hold a block with him that would allow the running back to get outside. However, if this tight end effectively blocks Kerrigan, whether he gets a big block on him or just holds his block, you know, one-on-one, that would allow for the running back to potentially get outside. And so you have to understand where these run assignments are, where these players are lined up, and how the offense could potentially run the football before you can start adjusting these things. Now, what you guys want to also consider is the action of these defensive linemen. Like I said, Lawrence is going to try and come in a little bit on this play, and the nature for Kerrigan is going to bounce out a little bit because he is also... While he is also dropping back in coverage, he also has the assignment as the outside linebacker, the outside player, to hold contain, which means he's going to probably bounce out this way slightly outside of the tackle, or rather tight end, to hold his block. And so that leaves a rather large gap right here between the defensive end and the linebacker before the play ever even starts for us to recognize that we have to fill. So we can make an adjustment to fill that gap. Now, the other thing that you want to consider is the other two gaps that I identified. I identified this gap right here, but they're likely not going to have any room to run through there because, like I said, Lawrence is kind of pinching in right now, and this D tackle, Vita Vea, is moving to the right. And so those guys are going to automatically close that gap down. But what does that do? That leaves a pretty big gap right here between the center and the guard. And so you're going to have to focus on making adjustments to fill this gap right here and filling this gap over on this side. That's pretty much where this run play can go. Now, if we go ahead and execute the run play and just let them run the football, that's pretty much where you'll see the ball go. And I actually apparently called a pass play because I have the wrong I have the wrong button selection scheme on right now. So let me go ahead and select the actual run play for you guys. We're going to come out in the base 3-4, come out in that offensive single back formation for you guys, and then show you guys where the play is actually going to go. So I want to press square and just let them run their halfback dive and see where the general action of the play is going to go. Now Thomas Davis came around and made the play. We got a little bit lucky on that one, but let's see if they can run this one again. Nope, Thomas Davis apparently is fast, which is not true. But generally speaking, you see the idea of where the ball can go. It can go up the middle to those two gaps that I identified, and if the running back was fast enough and paying attention, they could probably run the ball to that gap to the right as well. So there you go. You saw a good example of where that gap formed between the guard and the center, and so we have to try and close that down. And in addition to that, I can kind of review it for you and show you where the gaps form. So you guys can see right where I identified the three gaps is where the ball can go. There's this gap right here. If I can zoom in without locking onto people, there is this gap right here, like I said, between the tight end and the right tackle, because that guy's kicking out, the linebacker's tendencies to go outside. There's this gap right here between the guard and the center, and then in addition, there is this gap right here between this guard and center. So we have to adjust our run fits or our defensive run assignments in order to be able to prevent that from happening. One of my favorite things to do on defense to prevent that from happening is coming out in this base 3-4 formation, pinching the D-line, spreading the linebackers, and bringing a safety down to help. Now, what does this do? This pretty much automatically forces the ball into two gaps, and you guys can probably already see what those gaps are. They're not getting the ball up the middle between these three guys. They have one-on-one matchups. There's not going to be a hole there. Now, spreading the linebackers allows me to make sure that I absolutely have contain on each side. So I eliminate the ability of the offense to run the ball outside. Now, what I'm doing is I'm forcing them into this gap between the linebacker and the D end, and this gap between the linebacker and the D end. Now, no matter how many players they might have free to actually be able to block me, there's no way they can block all three of these players. And the reason that I bring this safety down is, number one, because they can help out roam and make the tackle in the run game. But number two, whenever the offense comes out in a heavier formation where they don't have immediate speed threats to the deep part of the field, there's no immediate need for this safety to be here. You know, if I start out here and I recognize that maybe that slot receiver is running to the deep part of the field, I will be able to get back in time, or the safety as an AI will be able to run back here in time and keep pace with that receiver and make a play. So there is no immediate threat down there. Don't be afraid to bring your safeties down in to help those with these run fits. And so what you guys will note is that these guys are pretty much stacked up. This guy will have potentially a one-on-one matchup with the running back if he comes this direction, and same thing with this gap. This guy will have a one-on-one matchup with the running back if he comes in this direction, because the tackle over here has to block this linebacker. He has to make an effort to, or he'll have to block this linebacker. And so one of these guys is free here, one of the middle linebacker or the outside linebacker. The guard, the center, and the other guard are pretty much locked up. Likewise for over here, this guy's pretty much locked up. This guy might come free, and then I have an additional player that can come free. And so I have forced the ball into my hand. I forced the ball to go into the direction that I want it to go. Now, my players didn't make the greatest play. I wasn't using one of the linebackers, but the idea remains the same. So let me come down and actually user the safety this time and show you guys how I am essentially forcing the ball to where I want the ball to go. You know what I mean? Instead of allowing the offense to run the ball to the place that they want to run the ball, I am utilizing my run assignments to force the ball to the gaps that I want them to run it in. I don't want them to get outside, and I don't want them to go straight up the middle. I want them to go into these two gaps that I am choosing for them to run the ball into. And so that's how I play defense in terms of run fits or run assignments, is I try to force those guys into those gaps. Now, aside from doing an advanced adjustment like pinching the D-line and, you know, spreading the linebackers, bringing the safety down, doing multiple things, what you can simply do on a basic level is this. I can take my D-line and tell them to slant to the right. And now, instead of DeMarcus or whichever Lawrence this is coming inside and creating a big gap on the right side of the field, he is now sticking to the right point of the field. And so what's going to happen here is the run lanes are essentially right here and right here. And so all I have to do is shift my D-line to slant to the right and then bring this safety down into this general vicinity, and I pretty much have everything stopped. They might be able to get outside of Ryan Kerrigan here, so I might want to just move him out a little bit in order to prevent that from happening, but that's all you have to do is those minor adjustments. And as you guys can see, I had every single gap filled there because of that minor adjustment of, instead of having Lawrence pinching to the inside, which is unfavorable for me against what this offense can do, I have him going to the edge and filling that gap. And so therefore they can run up, you know, the gaps that I showed you guys, but the linebackers are able to come in and fill it, and the one-on-one matchups are favorable for me by doing that. And so that is a combination of recognizing what my defensive assignments are, what my run fits are, and recognizing where the offense can run the ball. I know where the 3 points are that this offense can run the ball, and so in order to prevent that from happening, in order to force the ball inside or force the ball to a location where I want them to run the ball, I simply need to adjust this defensive end right here. I simply need to adjust him to rush to the right side. and that's going to prevent them from going to where I don't want them to go. I can bring a safety down to help out in stopping the run, and that's going to help me out tremendously. So that's pretty much what you can do. In addition to that, I could slide my defensive line to the right. That's going to create new gaps, and so this linebacker pretty much gets to fill this gap with a one-on-one matchup against the running back, and this linebacker has the option to go here or here, but it's going to be difficult for the offense to block all of those. And like I said, bring down a safety again to help fill those gaps, and you should have no problem stopping the run against a formation like this. Now, it gets complicated whenever you have, super heavy formations. It becomes a little bit more difficult, and you just have to be good at trying to guess where the offense is going to run the football and preventing them from getting too many yards out of that. But it also becomes a little bit more difficult for them, because if they see a stacked front, there's not much that they can do to audible out of it. So that's what you want to do out of a base defense to stop the run. Let me go ahead and adjust to a shotgun to kind of give you guys some of the same idea of what you want to do out of a, more of a passing formation to stop the run. So we're going to come out in a base nickel here. Like I said, you can come out in a big nickel to help stop the run with a heavier personnel if that's something that you're having trouble with. But what I will show you guys is, how about a formation like this, and we just come out in a halfback base. Actually, I just called the wrong play again. It's really killing me that the X isn't in the middle. And we'll show you guys how to adjust to it to prevent the run out of the shotgun, because there are a couple things that are a little bit different about running the football out of the shotgun. So the first thing that you want to note out of the shotgun is that the action with the football essentially means that the running back has to go to the right side, or they have to go to the opposite side of where they start out. So because of the way this play is going to work out, you'll see he pretty much has to go to the right side because of the way the handoff works. And it's going to be tough to stop that, especially against good running backs. Now, there is the chance against very agile running backs that they can cut back, and I want to show you guys where that cutback lane is. This isn't going to be against every running back, but that running back has the option where if this block is correct, he can cut back through this gap right here, or he can cut back like kind of up the center here into this gap. You guys can kind of see there's a gap right here that he could cut through between this lineman and this lineman. He could cut back if he chose to, but they have to be very agile. For the most part, running backs aren't agile enough to make that happen, and so you're going to want to pay attention to the opposite side of the field of where the running back is lined up. If he's lined up on the left side of the field here, I know that the ball has to go to the right. And so I need to mainly pay attention to those gaps on the right side of the football. Now, don't totally neglect the left side of the football. Like if I adjusted my entire defense and shifted them to the right and left it wide open to the left side, then yeah, the guy's probably going to cut back and break away for some yardage. But I can do some things to pretty much adjust myself to prevent these guys from getting any yardage, because I know that the ball has to go to the right side of the field. And so in that way, it is actually easier to stop a run out of a shotgun formation from the aspect of knowing pretty much where the ball has to go if it is a run. Now, you obviously don't have the same type of personnel. You're not as heavy of a defense to be able to prevent that from happening. And so, like, as you guys can see, there are more run gaps here. There's definitely a big gap here between this D tackle or D-end and this linebacker. There's a gap right here between these two players. There's a gap here, and honestly, I don't have contain on this side either, so they could probably run it to the outside of the tight end. And so what you need to do in order to prevent those things is you need to start bringing players into the box to prevent that from happening. And you know that the ball is going to the right side, so my first adjustment would be to slide at least your linebackers to the right side of the ball. I'm not opposed to sliding the entire defense to that side, but I would start with sliding the linebackers and lining this linebacker up in that gap, because you know that's pretty much where that ball has to go. If they come into this gap, the linebacker might be ready to stop the play. In addition to that, if it goes outside, I can trust this linebacker to go outside of this block and try and come out here and make a play. In addition to that, I know that this linebacker has a good shot of coming up into this gap and making the stop because there's no lineman here that is prepared to block him. If it goes this way, I'm at a little bit of a tough position because there are 3 linemen blocking 3 players. And so what I would recommend in order just to cover your backside is, depending on which player is covering deep, I might bring that player down slightly, but the player that's covering underneath, I would risk bringing them in a little bit as well so that they're closer to the action and can make a play in case the running back does choose to cut back. But what you guys will see is with this adjustment, if I sit these guys where I want them to be, they should do a better job. That is, if they don't put themselves out of position, they should do a better job of stopping the run on that side. So they did a decent job that time. I'll try and do it one more time for you. And all I'm doing is adjusting these players over to that side. I'm adjusting the linebackers over slightly and putting them in a position to stop the football from coming through the gaps that I know are open. Based on my defensive linemen's assignments, I know pretty much what is going to be open. So that's just a minor linebacker adjustment, moving them over to that side and saying, hey, this is where I think the ball is going to go. Stop it. In addition to that, you can do the same thing I showed you before where you slant your defensive line to the right, and so, you know, they'll put themselves in better positions. You don't necessarily have to shift your linebackers over. I can just like maybe give them a small scooch over to allow them to try and do that on their own, and try and shift my defense to that side to prevent the ball from going there. Obviously, it didn't work very well that time. I personally recommend shifting the defense or shifting the linebackers a little bit further over because I think that'll help out a little bit more. But the idea is you need to be able to start to recognize from an offensive perspective, where can that ball go? You know, realistically speaking, if I were playing, you know, I'm playing defense, but I need to look at the offense and say, okay, if I was playing offense right now, which direction could this run go? And therefore, look at my defensive assignments and fill those gaps related to where the ball could go. And now this is obviously Dalvin Cook, so he's pretty good at making plays. He was able to make a nice cutback there, and there's just not much you can do about that at that point. But what you can do is you can certainly bring down safeties to help yourself out. You can move corners in to give yourself a little bit of an edge on that side of the ball. It's all about moving players into those gaps and putting them in positions that they're not going to be blocked, or putting them in positions to be able to make tackles. Like right now, you know, you see there's this giant gap here. If you don't move anybody over, who do you expect to make that tackle? You know what I mean? You have to bring somebody down into that gap or somewhere near that gap. That way, when the ball goes that direction, there's somebody there to try and make a play. So that's pretty much the general idea of it. I apologize again for the fact that I recorded a whole 25-minute video and it didn't have any audio, so I'm doing it again for you guys, and I hope that it's at least somewhat helpful to somebody out there. Shout out to the person that left the comment. I apologize, I don't have your name at the moment. Leave it down in the comments section if you're the one that was the one that asked for this video. Hopefully this helps in some way. Hopefully I did it justice. I know it's not the perfect video, but I just hope that like I said, that I'm able to help somebody out. If I did help you out, or if you guys have some information for me that could be helpful, certainly leave that down in the comment section below. Leave a like on the video if it helped you out. Leave a like on the video if you guys appreciate the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.